Video game movies in Hollywood have proven to be a very tricky line to walk. The only objectively good video game movie I've ever seen was Sonic the Hedgehog, although I did used to like Mortal Kombat. But the best examples of video game movies I've seen are ones that emphasize the style of video games but don't actually adapt their source material from any pre-existing video game property. Good examples of that include Crank, Edge of Tomorrow, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Now, imagine that style of storytelling combined with a gonzo premise and starring Daniel Radcliffe, and you have honestly one of the best action films in recent years.
Ho 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 ho, delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, the show where we discuss films that all at once meet the criteria of being the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host, Jukebox Harry, and today we are going to be looking at a modern cult classic which serves as an unexpected twist in the career of Daniel Radcliffe. Guns Akimbo is the most recent film that I will have talked about on this series so far, and it's also a film which really needs to be seen by a much wider audience. For people that want to see that action films can be done directly, for people that can't see Daniel Radcliffe playing any roles beyond Harry Potter, and by people who need to understand that video game films can be done correctly. Guns Akimbo is a New Zealand production with a predominantly Kiwi and Australian cast, although two of its main stars are in fact British and Irish. Yet what really impressed me about this film was it really felt like I was actually watching a Hollywood movie. Hollywood films have really put themselves at the center of the universe. They've established themselves as the norm in the standards of filmmaking. And when other cultures try to mimic films on the same scale and production value of Hollywood movies, they're not always able to capture that exact same feeling. I remember when I was a kid, the first time I watched the film Tomorrow and the War Began, I was blown away by the fact that even though this film had an Australian cast, director, writer, producer, and was filmed in Australia, it felt like a genuine Hollywood blockbuster. That was the exact feeling I got watching Guns Akimbo, and I didn't even notice that it was a New Zealand film until the second time I watched it, because the first time I was just so lost in the movie and enjoying myself that I didn't care about picking apart the pieces and trying to identify how they got away with certain things. I just sat back and enjoyed it, and I want you to enjoy it too, and that's why I'm here talking about it today. Before I jump into it, I would like to give a shout out to Monster Pictures for awarding me 2 free tickets to see this movie. In the lead up to the Australian release of Guns Akimbo, Monster Pictures actually hosted a competition on social media where people would take a template to the poster for Guns Akimbo, Photoshop it, and the best entries would end up receiving a series of different prizes. The winner ended up being Harry Potter and the Chamber of Bullets. Other notable examples included Pugs Akimbo, Evil Dead Akimbo, and The Greasy Strangler Akimbo. I got a runner-up prize with my entry. Oh fuck, my hands have been switched to Danny DeVito. I'm very proud of that one. Every time a major action film gets released, I go in with a lot of concern that the filmmakers will have fucked it up, because there's been a trend in action cinema throughout recent years to rely so much on shaky cam and choppy editing that I've been left wanting to actively murder filmmakers. Mile 22 served as an example of this. Taken 2 and 3 were even worse. But even Rambo Last Blood couldn't evade making those mistakes, and that's the one series which has consistently doled out pretty exciting action over the years. Guns Akimbo does not make that mistake. Guns Akimbo kicks off immediately with a pretty exciting action scene with Samara weaving involved in a road rash shootout with a couple of guys, and already we're off to a good start. It gives us a solidly crafted action scene which also mimics the style of video games in spots, but not to the point where it's too much. There's a nice balance given to the visual style, and it sets the standard for the manic energy of the film to follow. Then the story begins. Daniel Radcliffe plays Miles, a character who is most likely the same as 90% of the people watching the film. He's a guy who spent his life consistently plugged into the virtual world, playing video games and watching a reality series called Schism.
Schism picked random psychos, weirdos, and criminals and made them fight each other to the death. It was twisted and disgusting.
Lee wins.
He spends a large amount of time on the internet arguing with other users.
I was the ultimate troll hunter.
On my second viewing of Guns Akimbo, I was showing it to a bunch of people, and the moment that he said that line, everyone in the room cringed, because all at once we remembered the time that we were 14 years old on social media, arguing with trolls and internet bigots to make ourselves heroes of the modern day. I cringed especially hard because 10 years ago there was a brief period of time where I actually went semi-viral as a YouTuber who called myself the Troll Hunter. I kid you not, people all over 4chan were talking about me, trying to figure out what my gender was, either praising me or criticizing me, and also condemning a lot of the language I used, which honestly was a fair point. And it's funny, I've never actually told anyone that story, but there you go. That's a part of my past that I am definitely not proud of. After arguing with the admin of Schism, he gets doxxed. Which, for those of you who don't know, means the other person has tracked his IP address, which can be used to then find his location in the real world. And this is what happened to me in my Troll Hunter days. I got doxxed by someone who also started harassing my mother on social media. So immediately afterwards, I shut everything down and completely disappeared. And I don't think anyone actually remembers me, which is good, because yeah, there is a downside to going viral. Later on, the guy that he argued with, Richter, breaks into his apartment and he looks like Rocky Horror creator Richard O'Brien if he went on to become an actual dramatic actor. He knocks him out and performs surgery on him, which we get through a very well captured first-person sequence that feels right out of a first-person shooter. The next morning, Miles wakes up to find that guns have literally been bolted to his hands. And the scene makes use of some long camera takes with a lot of warped camera turns to provide us with a mood of uneasiness. He also has 50 bullets in each gun. This scene also gives us a sense of the film's soundtrack and sound editing. It's a very 8-bit influenced musical score, and the film uses video game sound bites when Miles uses an inhaler to equate it with a power-up. Turns out Miles is the next contestant in a game of Schism, and Nix is his opponent. And for the record, this is fucking Nix. After watching this scene, I wanted everyone in the world to see it. This is one of the most innovative action sequences I have ever seen from a movie. The choreography is awesome, even though it's not exactly groundbreaking. What's really amazing about this sequence is everything about the style. The cinematography uses a lot of long takes, tracking shots, close-ups, and Dutch angles, with some very subtle touches of shaky cam, the correct way to use it. The lighting is incredibly stylish, and the blood effects are nicely over the top without ever being excessive. Director Jason Lei Howden handles this entire scene like an artistic exhibition. He shows us the capabilities of innovation in cinematography, lighting, and editing. I've never seen an action scene like this before, but Guns Akimbo introduces audiences to a new standard of potential for action filmmaking. In a very conspicuous cop disguise, Nick sneaks into the police station and tracks Miles down, and Miles learns how difficult it is to pee when both your hands are bolted to the gun. We actually get to see his dong peeing in this scene, and you guys should be aware of my stance that the cinematic world needs more dong. Also, when he read this moment in the script, this is the scene that actually compelled Daniel Radcliffe to take on the role in the film. I love that. Then he struggles to get dressed.
Don't you hate pants?
He settles for a gown and some tiger slippers, and just as he gets out the door, Nix comes to shoot the place up. We're about 20 minutes into the film and already on our third major action scene. This film knows just how frequently they need to dole out the exhilaration to engage viewers. After running from the gunfire, Miles stops to engage Nix in conversation.
I don't want anything to do with Schism.
Why are you dual-wielding pieces then, Mr. Hardboiled?
They drugged me and they drilled these onto my hands, like right through my... Shit, I think I need some antiseptic or something. They're all red and sore.
Oh, that's rough, fuckboy.
So
The chemistry between Daniel Radcliffe and Samara Weaving in this scene is great. Radcliffe is so actively petrified while Weaving is perfectly chill while also ready to spring into action at any moment. He distracts her with the noise of a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, Hard Target. One of his absolute best and one I will definitely talk about on the show one day. And while the noise confuses her, he dives out the window and down the fire escape. Guns Akimbo actually has a lot of great moments of physical comedy, never forgetting just how ridiculous its premise is. Although sometimes it's a little on the nose, like in the next scene where Miles tries to alert the police of his situation by pulling his gun hands out of his pockets. Naturally, they respond with hostility, so he has to run again. Eventually, he gets caught. He runs to the park where he was scheduled to meet his ex-girlfriend Nova, but almost misses her until he literally dives through her car window.
Holy shit!
Oh, that sucks. You didn't think it through that your missile can't go through bushes. Miles tries to explain the situation to Nova by pulling his guns out and pointing them in her general direction. After being dropped off and giving up on life, Miles gets interrupted.
why shouldn't I?
Well, the angle's all wrong. You won't hit your brain. You'll just end up blowing your damn face off.
By the strange white guy from Hunt for the Wilderpeople.
Okay, thanks.
And then you'll still be depressed. Even more depressed, probably, because of your fucked up face. Try and angle it right to the rear base of the...
I love this guy. Rhys Darby just has a natural flair for playing comic relief in a film that's already funny. Miles also eats a hot dog, which is meant to be a gag because he struggles to eat it with his gun hands and because he's a vegetarian.
Well, that's a great philosophy, man, but most people in the world, they just eat whatever they can get. And it's one thing to say you can't face violence, but when it faces you, you better be ready.
I don't know what point the film was trying to make about vegetarianism there, but it doesn't really make sense, and also I'm vegan, so fuck you. Miles goes back to his office and makes up a ridiculous reason for his hands being in his pockets.
I glued my hands inside my jacket.
You did both of your hands. How's that possible?
Well, first of all, through God, all things are possible, so jot that down.
His co-worker disables the tracking on his phone, and then Miles' boss, who is the ultimate Chad, comes and starts giving him shit as usual. But Miles has had enough.
What you gonna do? Take me on? You gonna hit me, amigo?
You el loco. Oh, shut the fuck up! Stop pretending you speak fucking Spanish, you fucking idiot!
I'm sorry, please don't kill me.
You put me down every time I come in that door. You docked my pay for attending my mother's funeral, and you hit on my girlfriend in front of me. I am so sick of you and all of your fucking shit. Fuck you and fuck that fucking chipmunk.
Squirrel.
That moment is incredibly satisfying. Not only because we've all wanted to give that speech to someone at some point in our lives, and point guns at them as well, but also because this is fucking Harry Potter doing this. It can be a little difficult to see Daniel Radcliffe playing characters other than Harry Potter after growing up with him and having seen him play Harry Potter so many times, and he certainly really did not do many favors with his performance as the villain in Now You See Me 2. although he did turn in a really good performance with Kill Your Darlings, and he was alright in The Woman in Black. Still, with Guns Akimbo, he plays such a relatable character in such a ridiculous situation. And his voice does not even sound the slightest bit like Harry Potter, so if you're still struggling to believe that Daniel Radcliffe has range beyond playing that character, then this moment should be the moment that sells that to you. Nix is back, enter another shootout where Miles actually tries to take a shot for one.
Fuck! You're a horrible shot.
His co-worker distracts her while he gets away.
Mistakes were made.
This turns into yet another car chase where Nix literally rides her motorcycle onto the top of his car. There's a crash. But then she keeps chasing him on foot, and he takes another shot at her.
Congratulations, I think you've just discovered a whole new level of retardation.
That word is not okay.
It's okay if you shoot like one.
Please, just leave me alone. Okay, I haven't done anything to you.
I gotta kill you. Every cop in the country is looking to end me, so.
Yeah, that's not my fault.
Schism said they would wipe my slate clean after I bury your ass.
Oh, well, that's what they told you? Well, so you're just like their minion?
What, like those yellow butt plug things from the movies?
There was no conceivable reason they had to put a Minions joke in this film, but they did, and I love that they did. The chase starts again, and Miles starts trying to shoot back for once, although not all that well. And it turns out that Nix's weakness is explosions. They give her PTSD to some kind of tragedy. That part kind of felt a little bit forced, but oh well. Miles tries to leave town, but Schism takes Nova hostage to ensure that he stays and plays the game. After calling the cops, Miles walks into the middle of some kind of gang war, and so does Nix.
Who the fuck is this crazy whore?
Oh, God, you killed us all.
Hey, thrift store leather daddy. Suck my clit.
That line was actually really badass. I want to see more female action stars saying lines like that. Nix mows everyone down and Miles escapes again, and in the confusion he ends up shooting one of the gangsters.
No respawns, no one-ups, no extra lives. I just killed this fucking guy.
And then the police capture him, but they decide to use him as bait to track Nix down. And the explosion flashback we saw earlier in the film was from when he arrested Richter years prior, who in revenge planted a bomb in his wife's car which killed her and his son.
Nix is your daughter?
But it just so happens that Richter owns the police.
Whoa! Holy shit, dude! What the actual fuck?
Nix tracks him down and they have a little talk.
Thought we were gonna talk it out for a bit. Exchange some banter. Some obligatory pre-gunfight foreplay.
Miles tries to talk her into joining forces with him, but...
No.
Schism bags him up and then drags him home. But then...
Surprise, cockbags!
And Nix has followed him there. It turns out that Miles actually revealed to Nix that it was Richter who killed her family, and that he put her in the game expecting that she would die in there and thus never try to get revenge on him. This, and seeing the dead body of her father, convinces her to team up with him, and she gave him a bulletproof vest to pull off the stitch-up. And we start the final assault with a little bit of banter.
Open the fucking door.
I'm not exactly great at opening doors right now.
Go on.
Honestly, I still don't trust you. You might shoot me in the back.
I promise that when I do shoot you, it'll be in the front.
You have already shot me like a dozen times. I can feel bullets rattling inside me when I walk.
Walk.
What the hell? I'm a real...
Enter another glorious action scene, and the best one since the start of the film. Though all the action in the film is great, the majority of the film's middle section is composed of Miles being on the run while other people shoot at him. But now it's all about him and Nix just massacring everybody together. And the film goes back to its full artistic badass potential.
Really? Another dick shot? Oh, God!
You don't shoot a guy in the dick!
Oh, don't do it again!
I know this is a joke, but really, you don't shoot a guy in the dick.
What was he thinking?
Yeah, never bring a spork to a gunfight.
This film really knows how to stop for a laugh once in a while, and it does it so smoothly. In comes a dual welding mini-boss, and a guy with a mohawk and a hammer. I have to say, I have a very deep appreciation for action movies which use hammers as the weapons in fight scenes, because objectively the greatest fight scene in movie history was the one-take hallway fight from Oldboy where the protagonist smashes through a bunch of criminals with a hammer. And there's also that amazing scene from Raid 2 with the hammer girl on the train. It's just such a good weapon in the right movie. It turns out that this guy's a pretty solid match for Nix. Miles struggles against his dual-welded counterpart, but there isn't much of a fight because he just shoots her in the head. Nix, however, doesn't have the same luck, finding out that this guy is pretty good when it comes to weapon-based combat.
Let's give you a nice wide Chelsea green.
We get it, The Dark Knight's a good movie, but it was 12 years ago, mate, move on. Just like everyone else at some point in their life, Nix realizes that she can fix her problems using drugs. Nyx unleashes her fury on him, and the film adapts elements of the Tekken spin-off game Death by Degrees by showing us x-rays of bones breaking. And then Miles comes by and shoots him.
Did you not hear me say, don't shoot?
Well...
You only need to shoot me one time. Really important. I don't feel like you're listening to me. Just one.
Yeah, call it even, I suppose. After getting pinned down by a barrage of enemies, Nyx randomly decides to run headfirst into all the gunfire.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
Turns out she's wired a bomb to herself, which eliminates everyone, except Miles, and Richter, who has run off with Nova. I really did not like this part. Guns Akimbo spent a bit of time trying to make us care about Nyx, and then when she sacrifices herself, it just comes out of nowhere. There's no emotional core to it. Also, she was a major badass. They should not have killed her off. Anyway, Miles tracks Richter to the roof for the obligatory final showdown, but he only has one bullet left. Okay, I did not see that coming. That was a successful use of the bait and switch. Richter fires back, and then the most unexpected thing happens. Never surrender! All of the hairs on my skin stood up when I heard those words. This scene will only be appreciated by true action fans. Jason Lei Howden's eluded love of Jean-Claude Van Damme comes back here when he literally uses the inspirational 80s rock song from the film Kickboxer. Miles perseveres through several more bullets and beats the man senseless with some rough gun food. He pushes him to the edge and feeds him one of Nyx's severed fingers for some reason, then knocks him off. That was just such a magnificent moment. I always said to myself that if I ended up making an action comedy film in Hollywood, that I would use the theme song from an 80s sports action film, and Guns Akimbo beat me to it. Although ideally I probably would have used Winner Takes It All from Over the Top. In the aftermath, Schism goes on to influence other people worldwide to start making similar violent entertainment. So Miles makes it his goal to travel the world and shoot everyone that thinks it's okay to force people to kill each other for the sake of a TV show. And the credits roll. Is Guns Akimbo a good film? Guns Akimbo is fucking wonderful. Critics have had some mixed things to say about this film, but if you go to Rotten Tomatoes, do not trust the audience score. The last time I checked ratings on Guns Akimbo, it actually had a fresh audience score and a lot more ratings than just 5. I have been very suspicious of Rotten Tomatoes and their audience scores ever since The Rise of Skywalker came out, and between 5,000 reviews and 100,000 reviews, there was never a change on the film's 86% rating, even though it sucked. What's even more suspicious is that despite the fact that I've left over 2,600 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, when I tried to review Guns Akimbo, they did not accept it as a verified rating. Something very seedy is going on Rotten Tomatoes, so definitely do not trust their verified audience scores. Guns Akimbo is definitely not a film without its flaws. It has a formulaic story which uses its gonzo concept as a gimmick to separate it from the crowd, and such its attention to character development is not one of the film's highlights, especially since in the end it just kills off one of the greatest characters. Although I will say it does have a great protagonist whose redemption arc is enjoyable. And like I said, the film teases us with some groundbreaking action at the start, but then a lot of the action ends up being composed of the protagonist just running away from things, which isn't all that exhilarating. And there are times when the film tries to be a bit smarter than it actually is. Many parts of Guns Akimbo have some social commentary to them, touching upon the most toxic parts of internet culture in the modern day. And from personal experience, I can tell you that me and the friends who all watched this film alongside me, we definitely reflected on those aspects as part of ourselves after watching this movie. So I guess its attempts at social commentary are kind of validated. But though it titillates you on the idea of exploring greater social commentary on society's view on violence, it never really does anything with that idea.
This is not how I thought this day was gonna go.
But in the end, when it comes to being an experimental comedy and a video game themed action film, Guns Akimbo very smoothly succeeds at being both of those at the same time. Radcliffe delivers a flawless leading performance, carrying no trace of the wizarding world of Harry Potter, but succeeding as a convincing action hero as well as someone who definitely should not be an action hero at the same time. And Samara Weaving is really badass, playing a shameless trigger-happy psychotic with a lot of great comic timing.
It's time to realign your chakras.
Rhys Darby's also a nice touch. He gives the film its one moment of definitive Kiwi humour.
I spend all of my time getting fucked up on a bunch of crack.
Oh, good for you.
Guns Akimbo combines some of the best elements of the film Crank with some of the better elements of the film Gamer, two video game inspired films which are entirely original properties, and both of which had the same directors. Guns Akimbo had a lot of the story ideas that were inspired in Gamer and the manic energy of Crank. Recently we had Hardcore Henry, which tried a little bit too hard to be a video game movie. It was entirely a feature-length first-person shooter film, but unfortunately a lot of the storytelling elements came up a bit short with its experimental style. Guns Akimbo makes the smart decision not to go overboard like that. It has the great energy of a solid video game action thriller, but it also takes itself a whole lot less seriously by leaning into its comedic premise. Most of the criticisms for Guns Akimbo end up relating to the fact that it just embraces gamer culture and has a fun time instead of trying to satirize it and make commentary on it. And I honestly think that that is a very inadequate criticism. Yes, this film does miss out on the potential to have some more social commentary to it, but that's because it's too busy having a good time to stop and comment on the fact that you shouldn't be having a good time watching this. When you're playing a video game like Bulletstorm, you're not playing it because you want to see it essentially parody the culture of video game violence. You're playing it because you want to get in on the violence. And a lot of the critics who saw Guns Akimbo seem to have missed this point. If you understand what it is to be an action junkie and you don't enjoy this film, then that's one thing. But if you're watching a film where a guy who literally has guns bolted to his hand tries to pee, and you're pissed off that you're not getting an essay on how modern gaming culture is a toxic cesspool of fragile masculinity, just look at the poster. Does that scream brilliant political satire to you? No. So settle down, Kirsty. The best aspect of Guns Akimbo has definitely got to be the visionary direction of Jason Lei Howden. I mean, just look at those action scenes. They're colourful, exhilarating, engaging. They use so many different kinds of shots and cuts that you just can't look away because there's so many innovative techniques popping up all over the place. And even when it's not an action scene, the cinematography is just incredible. Look at this scene at the beginning of the film where Miles is starting a day at work and scrolling through the internet. The quick cuts all give you a very intense feeling, conveying how intensely passionate Miles is about all his internet activities. The style of cinematography and editing in many moments from Guns Akimbo resemble the style of Requiem for a Dream, which used very similar techniques to try and put you in the mind of a drug addict. But of course, it's the action scenes of the film where things really come together. I would honestly say that Guns Akimbo deserves an Academy Award nomination for Best Cinematography, and I have never made a statement that big about any film I've reviewed on Delightfully Devilish, but I definitely believe that. Those of you that have been watching Delightfully Devilish should know how much I love my old-fashioned action films, and it's very clear that the director of this film does as well. It's obvious from the fact that they gave Miles movie posters for Rambo 2 and Commando, as well as the fact that they used a clip from Hard Target and the song from Kickboxer. But honestly, the action scenes in this movie just completely reinvent the potential for action storytelling, and for video game cinema. Aside from Guns Akimbo, the only other film I've seen in the past 3 years to have action scenes that are so brilliantly innovative would be Brawl in Cell Block 99. And that film is an undisputed masterpiece. The film had much more consistent storytelling than Guns Akimbo, and is fundamentally different in every way. But both that film and this one are really must-see movies for action junkies. Guns Akimbo gets 8 unnecessary surgeries out of 10. It follows a formulaic story structure and doesn't have as much character development or social commentary as it could, but Jason Lei Howden's tenacious direction makes for a visually stunning experience with some of the most amazing action scenes you'll see in modern day cinema, as well as the fact that he rakes in some highly winning performances from Radcliffe and Samara. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish. You guys, if there's any movies you would like me to discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. If you would like to see more episodes of this show, please hit that subscribe button up top. Otherwise, until next time, I have been your host, Jukebox Harry. Peace.